Evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Greetings.
Welcome to episode 128. I think I changed the episode number 3 times. I couldn't figure out what episode it was for some reason, but, but we got it figured out eventually. Well, welcome, everybody. Tonight we're going to discuss Christmas. Christmas and the problems with Christmas, crime and coveting, and somewhat of its pagan roots. So if you want to start us out, Dr. Ricks.
Okay, something just to liven things up. This one is called Office Lunch. People in my office were forgetting about food they left in the employee refrigerator. There was moldy, rotten food all over the place. So we came up with a new policy and asked that when you put food in the refrigerator in a box, put your name on it and a date on the container. As a reminder, a sign was posted on the refrigerator door. Please date your food. The next day, someone scribbled a sign below our sign. What? And give up dating men?
Was that a blonde joke originally?
Signed, Peggy. That was not a former blonde joke. I swore off those. Never mind. It's not. Okay, this one's called The Latest Buzz. A summer band class was taught. It was just getting underway in a large room with windows open. A large insect flew into the room. Well, the sixth grader was eager to show they could play their instruments, so they tried to ignore this big bug was buzzing all over them. And finally, little Tommy could stand it no more. He rolled up his music book and swatted the insect and then stomped it. And someone, is it a B? Nope, said Tommy. It's B flat. Now this last joke, listen carefully, is because I said so. After creating heaven and earth, God created Adam and Eve, and the first thing he said was, don't eat the forbidden fruit. Forbidden fruit? What forbidden fruit? Hey, Eve, said Adam, you got forbidden fruit. No way. Yes way. God said again, don't eat the forbidden fruit. Why? Because I'm your creator and I said so. A few minutes later, God saw the two kids having some forbidden fruit. He said, didn't I tell you not to eat the forbidden fruit? Adam says, uh-huh. Then why did you do it? Eve made me do it. Eve says, I don't know. Adam said, well, she started it, did not, did so, did not. Having had it with two of them, God said, I'm giving you a special punishment. You're going to have children of your own.
That's about right.
You know, I think there's some truth to that. I'm sure there are a lot of reasons for all kinds of things that God does, but don't you wonder, as a parent and a grandparent, that God is letting you feel a little bit how he feels? Because our offspring are a little like people in general. You never know what you're going to get.
That is true.
I want the perfect kid. Well, in the science fiction movies, they can design a perfect kid through genetics. Well, in real life, you don't get the kid you want. You get the kid you get.
Well, maybe, if you married the perfect person.
See, my wife walked out of the room. If you married the perfect person.
It's got to be her fault.
I remember one day I made my grandfather really mad. In spite of how I may appear now, I wasn't the most wonderful kid at all times. My grandfather said, I hope you grow up and you have kids just like you.
That's the curse.
That was a curse he taught me.
That's probably what your granddad did.
But anyway, so the one thing about Christmas that often happens, people have such great expectations. If you listen to TV and a lot of newspaper stories, it's supposed to be the most wonderful time of the year, and the families are so happy, and everybody's together, and they got all these wonderful gifts, and it's lovey-dovey. In the real world, there's a certain number of people that are lonely. They get bad. I used to get bad Christmas gifts, but I'll tell you about that later. They get bad Christmas gifts. Things don't go like they should go. And I think a lot of people, at least the stories we used to read, people get depressed. And when I was a supervisor at one place, this is many years ago, near downtown Chicago, there were a lot of women that worked there, and they told the women, as you got into the Christmas season, that purse snatching really went high. And they gave the women advice about don't have purses with long straps, a whole bunch of other advice and stuff. But they did say if some criminal grabs your purse, let him have it. You could get killed or beaten seriously. Because some women just freeze when the guy grabs their purse. And it's dark. They get off work this time of year. It's dark after 5. And they freeze more out of fear. And the criminal thinks they're trying to, out-tug him for the purse, and they get beaten. Well, and the stories. Now, I'm told if you look at national figures and stories, you get a mixed review about how bad things are or not.
I had a fella come in my shop a while back. He's a much older gentleman. He was from up north. I'm going to say New York, but it was some big, busy city up north. And he said it was 50 or 60 years ago. He was walking down the road, and a man ran by and snatched a lady's purse. And she opened her jacket, pulled out a gun, and shot him in the back, picked her purse up, hailed a taxi, got in it, and left. And there was no cameras or anything back in the day, so nobody knows who she was. And she just taxied, got in, and was gone.
Well, that was Merry Christmas to him, wasn't it?
Wow.
Well, anyway, and alcohol, drinking, and people get drinking too much. Those problems increase those time of year as well. But I thought we ought to maybe first mention, and we can come back to stats later, that because there's a story in our local newspaper, got it right here in my local paper, and it says that this is a local story from our town. This lady who writes a column, she says her son kept getting Santa Claus and Jesus mixed up, and they tried to straighten him out, but the child, they didn't mention his age. If they did, I forgot it. I'm looking at the article now, but he couldn't get it straight. And it occurred to me, don't they really give Santa Claus a lot more coverage than they do Jesus?
Yeah.
That'll work.
You get almost zero Jesus coverage. And you know what? When I was doing the prep for the show, I was looking up some articles, and what I plugged in was taking Christ out of Christmas. And it looks like, to me, you'll see a lot of this going around, happening nowadays, is these municipalities and these towns and cities are they're taking Christ back out of Christmas because he never was in it to begin with. They're removing him, and they're getting their pagan holiday back, which is what they're getting it back to where it was to begin with, an Americanized version of Saturnalia, and that's what they're getting back. And I'm seeing that articles, quite a few of them out there, where towns and cities are removing Christ, and you're left with what it was to begin with, this pure pagan holiday.
I don't know if it's still going on or not, but over in St. Pete, there was the Church of Satan over there, and they used to put a big banner out and said something to the effect of Happy Saturnalia, you're keeping our customs, or something like that, Christmas time. The other thing that always got me was I'd hear parents say, well, Santa Claus is bringing you presents, and they go, he brings them to every boy and girl in the whole world, and the child would say, how can he do that? And they would say, well, he practices the magic arts. It's magic.
I
So
think
there,
Cheech and Chong had the best one. When they were asked, he says, hey man, how does he get all around the world? And Cheech looked at him and he says, oh, it's ferret magic dust, man.
Give a little bit of reindeer, give a little bit of Santa Claus, a little bit more to reindeer. Yeah, I remember that. While Dr. Ricks is getting back into the program, there is a few studies here. Let me show you this one here, or a few stats we found, because when I went looking, here we go. When I went looking, what we found was there was conflicting studies. Some studies said there was major crime was down. All studies said small crime was up. Theft, employee theft, shoplifting, all that stuff that where people, like opportunistic theft, and that amounts to, here's this 2012 study found that the cost of shoplifting and fraud to retailers over the Christmas period, this was a 2012 study again. It was 5.8 billion in Europe and almost 9 billion in the USA. And I found another study that stated shoplifting and other theft during the holiday season costs Americans about $85 per household. That's once they because the retailers can't eat it all. They just increase the price of things, spread it out. So during that season, it's an extra $85 per household in the United States for theft.
Not my household.
Well, yeah, we all pay the price.
Look at that stat. Americans are bigger thieves than the Europeans.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
a lot of that is drug problems, because a lot of drug people at Christmas time, they start seeing that there's more opportunity to steal from their own families. And they'll burglarize the family's home so they can buy drugs. And so then the drug use goes up, increasing other crimes.
Right. Well, this study we were looking at, Dr. Ricks, was just shoplifting, and that was the billion in Europe was in euros. So I don't know what the conversion from that was 5.8 billion euros, and the study didn't break it out even. Then it was 8.9 billion dollars. So it may have been about the same in Europe as it was in the United States.
Human nature.
Yeah.
Yep, and I know. I mean, it's something in the business I'm in, the company I work for. It's always been an issue at this time of the year. Your theft goes up. You lose employees because they're stealing, so they can. And the other study I read is these people aren't stealing to give other people gifts. They're stealing for themselves, give themselves more stuff. They're not stealing to give something to somebody else. They're stealing for their own personal benefit. They just figure during this time of year nobody will miss it, or they just feel like they deserve more, or something to that effect. Yeah, that seems to be the theme this season.
And then I'm told in many counties they have the police and the deputies out looking to give more drunk driving arrests this time of year too.
Oh, they're everywhere right now. I drive, and they're everywhere.
Because they know you're going to be driving, not us, but many people will be driving drunk. And, well, how much drinking is too much? I guess it depends. But I imagine if you have 3 drinks, you can't drive. I mean, you're risking it when you drive. And sometimes you also have family fights and domestic violence and that sort of thing. I was thinking about the spiritual damage of why Christmas is detrimental spiritually. We didn't put everything in our notes because it'd just be too long. But an article, and they mentioned that the evolution of Santa Claus, how it went from Saint Nick in Italy. And then, by the way, the original Saint Nick was one of the bishops at the Council of Nicaea that formed the Catholic Church, and we believe brought in some paganized doctrines. But anyway, that Saint Nick was buried, and later he became famous, you know. And when they went to the North Country, the northern parts of Europe, uh, they had a god called Woden, and you know you'll see him in the comic books with Thor. They combined Woden and Saint Nick into a blended god who wore heavy winter clothes and dressed in black, and that was the Santa Claus of Northern Europe for many, many centuries. And then the Dutch came out with that poem, and then and that's how the Americans got the name Santa Claus. But it was close to that. And then the final one, I'm amazed. It was because I talked to an elderly lady who says she remembers it. In 1931, but I want you to realize that Santa Claus was a god, a false god in Northern Europe. And you know that thing about naughty and nice? Well, when Santa Claus came at Christmas time, if you weren't good, you were in trouble with Santa. He was more of a tough guy you had to be afraid of. So in 1931, Coca-Cola had to drop cocaine from their recipe, and Coke, sales went down. So they replaced it with caffeine, but they needed a big marketing, public relations blitz to get people back in drinking Coke. So they came up with a Santa Claus who was jolly and friendly and dressed in red instead of black. And that's the Santa Claus we know now, with a great smile and a white beard and the red clothes. And he's jolly and portly and friendly, sort of like the teddy bears they use now in Coke commercials. And believe it or not, it was a big success. The department stores needed Christmas shopping, and in other words, Santa Claus came from a pagan god to our commercial Christmas hero.
That's
Yeah, the
interesting.
original Santa Claus was a skinny, kind of ugly, scary-looking character, and then that's when they made him fat and jolly and all kid-friendly back in the 30s. I remember reading that.
Talked to the old lady who remembers the campaign, and she said Coke bottles had a certain shape, and that shape, Santa Claus kind of picked up that middle bulge of the shape, and it worked for Coke, and I guess it worked for American marketing and commercialism.
Here's the image. Here, I'll show it to you. This is what they drew, pretty much. That's what it looked like.
Can you find the something of the original?
Yeah, I'll pull that up in a second. I was looking for that, but
That is beautiful, isn't it? I mean, from a commercial standpoint, you see that in the magazine and posters, and if you're a little kid, you'd love it.
It's effective.
yep.
Red is your #1 advertising color. I find it interesting, red, yellow, and then blue, green, and white, black. They've got red, white, and green that they use a lot with the Christmas theme. So they're all call to action colors. Motivated color.
Yeah, it has nothing to do with the Bible or God. It's from paganism, and different people messed with it over the years, and commercialism.
I saw an article that said that at one time the Catholic Church presented Santa Claus as being like Jesus because he was like a higher power that came from above looking for good children.
I've had someone tell me, an older person tell me that, a very old person tell me when they were young that their parents, who were born in the 1800s, had told her that she should pray to Santa. And so she would go in at night and pray to Santa.
Yeah, in some places in Europe, Santa had a god status and a tough god status, someone you'd be afraid of, kind of god status.
Well, the guy puts coal in your stocking. You go reaching in there thinking you got a toy and it's coal.
I still remember that song about naughty or nice. Didn't the song stick in your mind?
Yeah, I don't.
Better not. How? You better not cry. Better not. Santa Claus is coming to town. So if you're poor and you get crappy gifts, you figure something must be wrong here.
Sing the rest of it, but pick up the beat a little bit.
Okay, so and it's not good. Let's go to in Rome. The Saturnalia. That's what was on December 25th, and for 8 days, ending December 25th, the Romans had a orgy, a religious free-for-all, where the courts were closed down because there were no crimes they would convict you of. Any woman out on the streets could be raped. You could take things from other people. You could drink all you want, be drunk on the streets. They also had groups of people who would sing songs related to the pagan worship Saturnalia, and that was the god of plenty, in the nude, run around the street in the groups in the nude.
And that's coming back. That's coming back. In South Florida, they have something called the Fantasy Fest, and people will take their children to this. And people are naked. They paint themselves, but they're naked everywhere, on the streets, in the bars. And there are people that will travel, take their kids there to see all the naked people. And the entire Key West just shuts down for this for, I guess, about a week.
That's just about 8 days, just like Saturnalia. Wow.
And it's interesting.
Go ahead.
It's interesting. The Christmas tree became very popular. I was watching a program and people were talking about the history of the Christmas tree, that it was actually German. Well, it wasn't. It came from Babylon. And they talk about the Ashtoreth poles. And there's a place over by Germany called Austria. I find it interesting, if we spoke the language, maybe that's a closer way of saying Asherah or Austria or Pole. Maybe it came from that.
Well, here's something that at least we know did exist. As the Roman Empire and the Roman Catholic, they made deals. Here's how I would express it. Since the church was a powerful factor within the Roman Empire, it had political and religious overtones, you'd want to be part of the one big powerful church. Well, a lot of various pagan groups said, well, we're willing to join your church if you let us keep some of our important pagan customs. And the Roman Catholic Church leaders, they also saw the political advantage of that. They said, well, if that's how we can get the pagans to join, we'll inculcate it. That's how they got to Saturnalia, December 25th. They said, well, we'll just Christianize it. And there may be more behind that as well. But the main thing is they picked that date because of sun worship, because that's when the sun is roughly at its lowest level, and then you pray to the sun god for the sun to come back. So the Romans picked that date, and then they got all those people in the Roman Empire to agree to it. Well, the Christmas tree in Europe ran into some people in Northern Europe called the Asherah cult, Asheira. But you can see how much that sounds like what you just said, David. Asherah, the goddess of fertility and sex, whatever. And the people of the Asherah cult said, well, we worship a tree. If you can bring our tree worship in, we'll join, the one big universal church. And they said, well, good, we'll bring it in. We'll turn it into the Christmas mass tree.
It's a membership drive. When you watch some of these TV evangelists, it's a membership drive. There's one guy talking about how many Muslims he has in his Christian church because they're so welcome. It's a membership drive. When you come out as a political leader, and you've got basically three groups of people. You've got the sun worshipers, and then you've got the moon worshipers or whatever, and you've got the others that are worshiping God, the Son of God, and then you find a way to come up with the Trinity to make it all fit, and that way you got them all. You know, look at the people running for office today. They're on both sides of everything. You know, I saw one walking around with a hijab on. One of the ladies running for office was out doing some talk wearing a hijab around her face. That's just shameless. I mean, it's just shameless. You know.
Well, let's, Ken, could you put up Jeremiah 10:3-4? If we got that. I hope I got the right verse here. Anyway, want to make a point about this particular verse, Jeremiah 10:3-4. Probably, if you know the history of the Christmas tree, this is not the Christmas tree. This is the pagan ancestor that they brought into the Roman Catholic Church and made it the Christmas tree. But I say this is like the grandparent or the tradition from which the Christmas tree tradition sprang from. And here's what Jeremiah warned the Israelites about. He said, and this is in a negative context when you read the whole verse, God is telling the people, for the customs of these people are futile. One cuts a tree from the forest, the work of the hands of the workmen with the axe. They decorate it with silver and gold. They fasten it with nails and hammers so that it will not topple. And then, of course, they worship that tree. And, of course, God says it can't move by itself. It can't do anything by itself. But earth worship, you know, there are people in this country, maybe they don't see it that bluntly, but don't they worship trees?
You know, I like verse 2. It says, do not learn the ways of the nations, or be terrified by the signs of the skies. Let me see this one, if I may. This one, verse 2, do not learn the ways of the Gentiles. Do not be dismayed by the signs of the skies, for the Gentiles are dismayed by them. Their customs to people are futile. It tells you where that came from. It came from the Gentiles. It was not from the Christian people.
And note that God did not take the perspective that the, I guess the big universal church took, that to get the pagans to join, we bring their paganism right on in, just relabel it, repackage it, and, you know, God wants, I'll call it quality control when it comes to religion. He wants you to worship him the way he wants to be worshipped, and without using any pagan tools like worshiping trees, poles, and apparently they had phallic symbol type tree poles that were part of the Asherah sacred feminine worship that was part of paganism.
There are communities right now that are advertising what they refer to as a festival of trees and have parades with it. Mm-hmm. It all comes this time of the year.
It's almost like as they squeeze out what little bit of Jesus in the Bible that's in Christmas, as they squeeze that out, we're going to get back to the more pure pagan Saturnalia or some modern version of it.
You know, when light moves into a room, darkness moves away from it. And as we remove Christ, and of course he was never in Christmas, but now they don't want even the sound of his name. And they're always talk about the Charlie Brown Christmas program, where they start off and they read something from Luke, I believe. As they remove that, it's going to get filled with something else. And that's why you're seeing this stuff with Islam and this kind of stuff becoming in the schools. As light moves into a room, the darkness goes away, but as the light goes away, the darkness fills that room. And that's why if we don't, as repentant Christians, abhor sin, you can't just say, I don't sin anymore. You have to abhor sin. You have to hate that, because that's what's killing you. You have to look at it like it's poison. You can't say, well, I'll take a little poison. Then you're going to slowly die. You know. So we have to look back on everything, and obviously the holy days or the pagan holidays or whatever, those are sin. But any and all sin, any covetousness or lust or whatever else. You have to abhor the fact that became part of you, that got into you, however it did. If it was taught to you by kids at school or if it was part of the family or whatever. The best way to avoid it is to learn to have absolute disdain for it. It tastes bitter. I don't want that in my life. That is how we have to do it. If we don't look back at who we used to be, little by little, that's just who we are.
That's a good point. I was thinking that what people should do is realize, well, if they put in pagan days, the worldly religion, if they put in pagan days to get the pagan world to join, so it's a paganized, compromised Christianity, what holy days did God want? What holy days are in the New Testament and the Old? And they are, Christ Church never celebrated his birthday. There's nothing in the New Testament about his apostles celebrating his birthday after he died or even while he was alive. But what you do see in the Bible is they not celebrated, but I'll say in a sacred way, they remember the death of Christ, New Testament Passover, his resurrection, unleavened bread, and Pentecost. Because as you know, the Sabbath between the days of unleavened bread is the wave sheaf offering, which represents the resurrected Christ being presented to God the Father. And then you count 50 days and celebrate that first harvest, which is Christ, the first one resurrected, and the rest of the first harvest, the church. And then the fall holy days represent the second coming of Christ. That's what the Bible celebrates. But of course, the world doesn't know that.
No, and those days lead you to light. They lead you to, Ted, fellow in the church, and I don't know if you'd want me to say his whole name, but he said one time at the feast, he says, God had to command me to do this. He had to command me. That's it. You will take 10 days. You will go stay in a condo at the beach, and you will eat, and you will hang out with people who love you and care about you. And you don't have to worry about buying the right gift or anything, because the gift is that you show up. And
the one thing about the feast, if you do it the way God planned it, you save your money up all year long. Of course, they had harvest. They took it out of the harvest. Where a lot of people, not all, but a fair amount, go into debt for Christmas. And I understand that you don't want to disappoint your family, but then that just gives you one more financial headache to handle.
I was watching their advertising, buy a car for Christmas, and it's like a Mercedes-Benz. I don't know anybody that does that. And so I said to my wife, do people really buy cars for Christmas? Because I'm lucky just to make a car payment at Christmas, And she
they
said,
go into debt. They go into debt and buy a car is what they do.
She said. She said they go into debt. And what do you do next Christmas? Watch them repo it?
There's an article that was posted on Facebook tonight by Rob Keeney. Tom posted it, I think, originally, and it's a great analogy. And I'll read part of it. I won't read the whole thing, but I just would like to read part of it. It says op-ed, why this Christian won't keep Christmas. He goes on, he says, imagine, if you will, that your wife wants to celebrate your birthday. So on a day of her choosing, she has a celebration for you because she says she loves you so much. Keep in mind, you never asked her to celebrate your birthday, but she's doing it for you to show you how much she loves you. Now, the day she chooses isn't your actual birthday, but it happens to be the birthday of her ex-boyfriend. And on that day, she decorates the house with the decorations that she used for her ex-boyfriend's birthday party. She cooks her ex-boyfriend's favorite meal. She wears his favorite dress and the diamond earrings he bought for her. And when she does it all, for you because she says she loves you so much. So that's a great analogy of exactly what everybody's doing. And it goes on to say, would you feel loved? Would you feel honored? I would say no. I wouldn't be too happy about that.
I know a guy that married a girl and asked her to change her name to his ex-wife's name. And she did.
She did?
Yeah.
Were they Muslim?
I won't tell you who they are.
Well, the truth can be subtle, but we were talking about the feast a few minutes ago. This big Christmas party, this 8-day Christmas party, is just Satan's counterfeit of the Feast of Tabernacles.
Yeah, 8 days of the Saturnalia, 8 days. Yeah, I see it. Interesting.
You count Christmas Eve into it, it makes it 8 days. And most people start their party by Christmas Eve.
And I like that article you read, Ken, because God, in the figurative sense, married Israel. And so in a figurative sense, he's also marrying the Church of God. And you'll see that analogy in several places in the Bible. So that story makes sense. And the raw paganism is, God's jealous of that kind of thing. And one little girl said, well, God is loving and wonderful, but he is jealous. If you look at the Bible, and we ought to go to Deuteronomy 12, 30 and 31. If you could pull that up on the screen, Ken, because I think the jealousy thing is worth mentioning. I mean, the way God feels about us. God loves us and doesn't want us being led into worshiping someone else. Would you like to read that for us, Ken? Maybe his microphone didn't pick up. Anyway, it says, take heed to yourself that you're not ensnared to follow them. These are the gods of the nation that the Israelites are supplanting in the land of Canaan, because all those Canaanite nations were evil and they sacrificed their babies, the whole bit. After they are destroyed from before you, that you do not inquire after their gods, saying, how did these nations serve their gods? I will do likewise. Verse 31, you shall not worship the Lord your God in that way. For every abomination to the Lord, and that, Lord would be pronounced Jehovah in English, or Yahweh, but Jehovah, which he hates, they have done to their God. For they burn even their sons and daughters in the fire to their God. So, God does not want us adopting pagan ways. It makes God jealous. And
looking at how he handled the nations that did those things historically, our nation needs to wake up. You go to Babylon to see the ruins. Egypt's never risen to be anything again.
In the book of Ezekiel, I didn't write the verse down, but it's in there. All the nations that celebrate the fall of Israel and Judah and did bad things to them, worse things happened to them. Like Mount Seir, that was the headquarters of the Edomites, and of course Babylon, the headquarters of the Babylonian Empire, and Nineveh, the headquarters of the Assyrian Empire. They all got terribly destroyed. Tyre, and Ezekiel's got a list of them. It doesn't pay. It really pays to bless Israel and the Jewish nation of Israel over the Middle East. Even if they're not always as good as they ought to be, you don't want to get on God's bad side by joining the pagans.
I look at it like this. If that's my son, I can handle it when he's wrong. You don't need to come over here and think you're going to punish my son. I can take care of that. And I think God looks at his people that way. And anybody who worships him and obeys him, he looks at them with that love as adopted sons. You go over and think you're going to straighten out the guy down the road's son. He's coming out of the house with a shotgun, or whatever. But that's not going to happen. And if his son needs it, if he's a good dad, and the father, God the Father, is a good father, he'll handle all of that appropriately and perfectly.
And I believe God knows that those pagan customs were bad for the pagans. That's why I was getting rid of them. And they were bad for the Israelites when they adopted them. And they're bad for this country too. People have become more, let's say, I'm trying to think about nice words for greedy and unthankful. There must be a nicer word than that.
A nice word for what?
Greedy and greedy and unthankful. There's a nicer word. I'm trying to think. It escapes me at the moment.
Oh, it's
Like shopaholic, but not
no,
quite.
it comes from the word affluent, affluenza.
They catch affluenza.
You know the story of the kid that said he was too rich and affluent to go to prison after he killed 4 people. So they gave him probation because he was too rich and affluent. Now they can't find him. That's a true story. He had a DUI where 4 people were killed, and he got 0 jail time because he was so affluent. It would be unfair to
I
him.
remember hearing that.
They're looking for him. It's all over the news now.
And his mother.
And his mother.
He killed them with his car, right? His sports car or something like
Yes.
that.
Yes.
And he blamed his dad for giving him everything he ever wanted. So it was his dad. That was his defense. It's his dad's fault.
Sure.
I mean, it's unbelievable, isn't it?
Well, we had ants in the bathroom the other day, and I had to call the exterminator, and he asked if there's anything unusual, and I said, all I know, it was her fault. So I know it wasn't me.
Because that's how the New Year.
Sound like
Not me.
Hey, following up with a little bit more statistics, I have here. I've got a statistic on DUIs from earlier. Real quick, it says government data shows 40% of all traffic-related deaths during the holidays involve DUI offenses. Between Thanksgiving Day and New Year's Day, it is estimated that 25,000 people will be injured in alcohol-related vehicle crashes. On New Year's Eve, DUI offenses increase by 155% compared to a 33% increase on Christmas Eve. According to a survey, 57% of people admit they have seen people driving while intoxicated. 40% admit that family and friends use the holidays as an excuse to drink.
That's what the Saturnalia is all about. And by the way, New Year's was also adopted from the pagan god Janus, which I guess January comes from that as well. And that was known for heavy drinking, Janus, the god Janus. And so they celebrated him on New Year's Day. In case nobody really believes that has anything to do with Christianity, but just in case. We might look at Luke 2, verse 8. Because people ask, well, there's, of course, the courses of the priest, which also prove that Jesus could not be born on December 25th. But I like this verse, Luke 2:8.
Did you say Luke 1 or Luke 2?
Luke 2:8.
Oh. Well, I have Luke 1.
Oh, maybe I didn't. Maybe I forgot to give you that one in advance. It didn't get up there. Anyway, Luke 2:8.
Yeah, this is not correct.
Yeah, the order of the division of the priests. If you calculate that thing through, you can tell it had to be fall or spring, and through some other reasons, most people agree that scholars believe it was fall. But that wasn't. But 2:8 was the one that I wanted to talk about, and I'll just read it. But you see it talked about all the time. In the same region, this is Bethlehem as Christ is being born. In the same region, there were shepherds staying out in the field and keeping watch over their flocks by night. In reality, you don't keep sheep out in the field on the hills at night. You bring them in corrals so they can be close together and stay warm. Because, well, even in Jerusalem, it actually can snow there, but at night it's very cold. You don't have those animals out at night. And also, the Roman Empire brought them there to their original family homes for taxation purposes. Romans were smart. They wouldn't have done that in late December. That's the hardest weather for people to travel in for tax collection purposes. They wouldn't have done that. So those are just two other things to tell you. This could have been fall, like September, which is what most scholars believe it was, But December, you would not have the sheep out in the field in December, late December too, almost January.
If you start in Bethlehem and draw a parallel line around the globe, it coincides with Chicago. So whatever the weather is like in Chicago around December 25th is what they would have in Bethlehem.
Also, the thing about the Middle East that's tricky is elevation. Parts of near Jerusalem and Bethlehem is near there is elevated. So it's going to be a little colder, even in America. If you're in the Rocky Mountains, especially like around Denver, you just get more cold and snow because of the elevation. So
well, in Chicago, it's plenty cold.
yeah, that's true. Wasn't it? Well, maybe that was 2 weeks ago. It was like 2 degrees in Chicago, or maybe I get my dates mixed up. Well, I mean, at night. It was really cold one night in Chicago. I mean, unbelievably cold. You don't. I mean, even if the day isn't so bad, you do not want to be outside at night. And these are just little things. There are many big historical things. You get all historical records that also show the reason that they picked December 25th was because of the Saturnalia, and they wanted to bring the pagans of the Roman Empire into the church. And let's face it, it did work. And I thought before we get to prophecy and world events, maybe we should mention that the early American colonists did not keep Christmas. And the reason that that's important, I'm going to tell you the story of George Washington. And most people should know this in their American history class, but most don't. Oh, did you all hear about Yale University? The guy went there to do a survey, and he asked students to sign a petition to get rid of the First Amendment, which also gives you the right to petition, by the way.
Right.
85% of the Yale students said, "Oh, it's a wonderful idea."
Yeah, they were all happy about it. They're dumb as a box of rocks, but they were all happy about it. It's scary to watch this sort of stuff to see how easily we're just going to get. I mean, it's just going to end because of stupidity. Ignorance is going to kill us.
Like a tsunami.
I mean, you've heard that the public education system is intentionally dumbing down the people so they can be manipulated and controlled in a socialist type government. And that survey proved it. I mean, let's face it, Yale has some of the best college students we assume in America. So that tells you what they were taught in public school about the Constitution. Absolutely nothing. I mean, that's one of the things that made America special, the Bill of Rights. First country to do that. First country to have freedom of religion, where most countries have a national state religion. And there are other parts of it that are very important too, but it's amazing.
Would you think, just out of curiosity, they would have read this and studied and said, what is this? What is this stuff people talk about, this Constitution, the Bill of Rights, the Declaration of Independence? Just out of curiosity.
No, they're not taught any of this anymore. They're just not. The public schools have achieved their goal. They have dumbed down the American people so they will fall and be easily led into anything.
I had a gentleman enroll his daughter in my class, and he said that the teacher told the kids to get in teams of 2 and to write up what they thought a perfect world would be. So his daughter and the other girl thought a perfect world would be a world that had God rule it, and his beloved Son would help to govern, and all the angels would serve God and the people. And in this perfect utopia, nobody'd ever be sick, nobody'd ever hurt. Everything would be made out of precious stones and all this stuff, and there'd be no sinners. So that the teacher asked her to define sinners. And so she said anybody that would lie or steal or harm other people, and gay people. And she said that the entire class wanted to just stone her. I mean, so they went crazy after her. So she's a tenacious kid, best I can tell. I've only known her a week, but she does seem tenacious. So
I believe they want to separate the younger generation, and they've done it, from America's knowledge about the American Revolution, the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and basic Judeo-Christian American standards, and they've achieved that. And I'm sure they reinforce it with more garbage the professors do. So the kids think it's wonderful to get rid of the First Amendment. It's like, wow. It's, you know, when you hear it, 85% of the people he encountered, Dershowitz, did that. So, and the reason I'm mentioning it, this is the story I want to talk about. When the American Revolution started, you know, King George of Britain was a superpower. He said, he did the obvious logical thing. Let's send a vast army to the New World and crush this revolution quickly. So they sent a vast armada of hundreds of battleships and thousands of professionally trained and disciplined soldiers. And some of them were German mercenaries, Hessians. And they defeated George Washington in Manhattan. It's a very interesting story. And they defeated him battle after battle, chasing him all the way down out of New York, down New Jersey, and across the Potomac River. And then winter came. And in most places, you don't fight war in the winter. You kind of rest up. But George Washington realized it was illegal to keep Christmas in American colonies until the 1850s. So Washington and his men were sober on Christmas Day, and he knew that the better equipped, armed, and trained army on the other side of the river, Trenton, New Jersey, would be drunk and on, hangover on Christmas Day. So he launched a Christmas attack. It was an easy victory, but the publicity from that victory got him 15,000 more volunteers and a ton of support. Assuming he had been keeping Christmas and was drunk like the rest of them, the American Revolution almost surely would have lost because they were desperate at that point. They needed a victory because people believe, the British are too strong. There's no way we can defeat them. That one victory turned, at least, it was still a long, tough war, but it turned the tide. And most people don't know the importance. You see a picture of George Washington, in his little boat, and others rowing him across the icy river with his big cape flowing behind him. That's the famous, portrait that I guess is the most famous portrait from the American Revolution.
Yep, I remember that story. They did teach us that when I was in school. Now the only thing they get taught is Marxism, pretty much.
Yeah, and all the bad things America's done. That's all they teach.
Yeah, you ask them who was Karl Marx, and they have no idea. I had a young lady.
His philosophy just about every day in school.
They think he was one of the Three Stooges.
Well, maybe he was one of the Two Stooges.
He was one of the Marx brothers.
Yes.
I was thinking one more thing to mention. Some people stress over Christmas to get the gifts and the decorations and really stressed out. Here's something that happened to some of us. We stress about not keeping Christmas in the past. And I think we need to get to the point where Christmas doesn't bother us, one way or the other. You don't stress over it. Somebody says Merry Christmas, and you happen to say same to you or something, don't worry about it. Normally we just say thank you or have a good break or, be friendly and positive, but God knows we don't keep Christmas, and I don't think we need to fear it or get stressed out about it, but some people, at least in the past, used to get stressed out about not keeping Christmas.
I think when you first get into the church, at least now, maybe back then it was all the time, but I think when people first get into the church and learn about it, that's probably something they go through. When they tell me Merry Christmas, I tell them enjoy your holiday, and I just smile and keep on going. That's
probably a very good answer.
Or like my grandmother gave me a gift in December and Christmas. I don't keep Christmas. She said, hey, you've been my grandson for whatever many years. She said, I can give you a gift in December if I want to. And I thought about it. Sure you can. They know I don't keep Christmas. But if I want to be friendly, cooperative, and they want to send me something, doesn't bother me any.
They say that the opposite of love is not hatred, it's indifference.
We were in Franklin, Tennessee last week, and I grew up in the church, so I got a lot of anti-Semitism stuff as a younger person. My wife said, "Oh, I never saw that." Of course, she's a girl, and she was raised in a Christmas keeping home, so she wouldn't see that. And we're walking through a store, and there were some girls walking behind us, probably around 16, 17 years old. And one girl said, "I feel bad for whoever," a name. And the other girl said, "Why?" And she said, "Well, she doesn't get any, or he doesn't get anything for Christmas." And the other girl says, "Well, they're Jewish." And the other girl goes, "Yeah, they're Jews." And then the other girl goes, "Yeah, he's a Jew." And then they all laughed. And my wife was like, "I never heard that before." What comes back at us is they think that it's right to dislike us or hate us because we don't partake in their days. I think maybe some of the people in the church to hear that they're not alone. I was talking to a guy tonight, and he said his son, and I'm going to change their names around, Chris, was in second grade, and the kids were singing Christmas carols, and he said, "I can't do that because we don't keep Christmas." She said, "Aren't you Christian?" He says, "I am, and that's why I don't keep Christmas." And so she said, "But that's abuse. Your parents, that's dumb for your parents to do that." And this young man got very upset, and he said, "I'm going to tell the principal on you." And he got up and walked out of the class, went to the principal's office. Well, the teacher sent the aide down there, or told the aide to watch the class, and she went down there. And the young man was very upset, and he said, she said, "We're dumb because we don't keep Christmas." And she said, "Did you say that?" And she says, "Well, no, but I think it's abusive. Why would his parents not allow him to partake in the things the other kids did?" And the principal said, "Well, he doesn't do Christmas." And she said, "Well, that's abuse. He says he's Christian. And anybody that doesn't let their children have what the other children have is abusive." And the principal said, "Did you not notice the Star of David around my neck?" And she said, "Well, you have Hanukkah." So somebody else in the office came in, and she said, "Miss So-and-so, this teacher is upset. He feels that their parents are being abusive by not allowing him to have Christmas." And the teacher said, "Well, he says he's Christian. Why wouldn't he keep Christmas?" And the lady said, "I don't know. I'm a Jehovah's Witness." And supposedly that's a true story. So we're not alone.
There's no punchline to that or nothing.
Hey, and then he punched him. No.
No.
I think there's one thing we haven't talked about, and that's the very word Christmas. What is it? It's the Mass of Christ as instituted by the Catholic Church, and that's all Christmas is the Mass of Christ. It is pagan as it can be. It is taking God's name in vain, is worshiping other gods, and is absolutely against the Ten Commandments of God, and is an abomination to God, as we know from other parts of the Scripture. But just break the word down and take a look at it, and you get it.
It's
Yeah, and we didn't even go into all the accoutrements that go along with Christmas. The mistletoe and all the Yule log, and most people in the church, maybe people who maybe aren't and have seen this verse, to go look all that the origins of Christmas. Look up Yule log, what it really stood for. Look up mistletoe, and there's all kinds of other things that were brought in from different pagan celebrations that have been glommed onto and associated with Christ, and it has nothing to do with it. So look it up for yourself. It's easy to find out there, and you will be amazed where some of this stuff, if you look it up, drive you to sites, pure pagan sites, because they're all celebrating right now. They're doing they got that one time they had dolls or something they set up, and they changed these things out during their Christmas season, their Saturnalia or whatever they call it, and it's as pagan, just like John, pagan as it can get.
Just like John said.
What's that?
Just like John said.
Mm-hmm. By the way, I stopped before we end the program. Remember, next week we're going to talk about any prophecy. We're going to talk about the beast, mark of the beast, the temple, the two witnesses, and those kinds of things. And we call it Prophecy Patterns Part 2. So if anybody has anything comments they'd like to make about those things, or topics they'd like to hear us discuss, they can email Ken. Would you like to give them the email address again, Ken?
Sure, it's lineuponline2810@gmail.com. lineuponline2810@gmail.com. We've got a couple last week. One from Diane, real interesting question that I sent out to Dr. Ricks, and we'll forward it to everybody. Real interesting question. I think we'll enjoy going through that. And then Frederick Tuttle sent something really interesting article on Germany and how they're kind of at the crux of all what's going on over there financially, and how this has been set up way in advance, and it's not really as happenstance as it may look to be. It's an interesting article. I'll share that with everybody as well, and you might want to look through that. But it's real interesting. So if anybody else has anything, again, lineuponline2810@gmail.com. Send it to us, and I'll filter it out to everybody else, and we'll look at it and work it in next week.
Okay. There's really nothing prophetic this week that's that big, is it?
That we watched this week, I don't know. I think maybe it could end up being people are real sick and tired, politically in this country anyway, of what the one party is absolutely useless. It has proven that nothing that the people want. It's the one party that when they signed that bill a couple of days ago, the
budget.
The budget agreement. People are getting very distraught and very sick of not being heard, and I think that can lead to some issues coming up in the next election year. Who knows what it could cause? Some kind of unrest in this country, because you're just tired of not being heard and both sides being the same. And when you cause a whole country of people to have absolutely no hope and no faith in the people that are leading it, who knows what could happen in the next few months.
That's true. America's government is not respected abroad, and not really, would you say, in some ways, not respected at home either.
Exactly. And if it looks like this election is pulled out from underneath the people, and there's a couple of candidates out there, I guess, that a large majority of conservatives and even Democrats are interested in. If it looks like this election is pulled out from under them again, and they're just going to get the establishment option, people are just going to be. Who knows what they might do, but I know they're just sick and tired of it.
Bernie Sanders is real upset right now, apparently claiming that, I'm not sure what his claim is that Hillary has somehow manipulated the DNC to slant things against him. So he's talking filing lawsuits against her.
I'm sure
we got one commie suing another commie. I really don't care.
Well, I'm curious what the outcome of that will be in the party.
Well, they are doing it. They are keeping everybody. She is the chosen one on that side.
Yeah, the Democratic debate is called the hidden debate. They hide it during the Christmas season on Saturday night, get low ratings, because they don't want her asked any hard questions. And I'm sure the media will cooperate. They won't ask her too many hard questions, but they want to keep it as low-key as possible. And that strategy will probably work. She'll get asked very few hard questions. It will all be, smooth sailing and as much as possible to Election Day. And I also believe this is true. It doesn't matter whether a candidate has had tons of scandals and been indicted. There's a certain party and a large group of people who don't care about morals, honesty. They don't care. And so if that's the case, that tells you a lot about America's future too.
One thing interesting about watching this cycle is the people that didn't wake up when Clinton was in office, and then the people that didn't wake up when let's say, a lot of the stuff, because Bush was pretty liberal, when they didn't wake up when he was in office, and they didn't wake up when, or they're starting to wake up now, since our current administration, and now they didn't wake up to what the media was. They're starting to wake up to that now, because everything is so blatantly in your face. We don't care. We're just going to tell you lies, and you're just going to like it. People are waking up now that didn't wake up 15, 20 years ago, and I don't think a lot of them are liking what they're seeing.
We had a woman.
I hope it's true. And the media, their goal is to distract people from important things, and we need to be thinking about God and the future of this country, where most people are distracted.
Yep, absolutely.
We had a female politician down here, and the people were upset, tried to ask her questions. She told them, "I didn't come here to listen to you. You came here to listen to me." And I think she threatened if they didn't do whatever, she'd have them removed. So she doesn't understand that her job's to work for the people. But she told them, "I didn't come here to hear you."
Yeah. It won't be long before people can't. They won't be working for the people. I mean, they still are technically, but it won't be too long if they get their way. That won't be an issue anymore. They won't be working for us.
Yeah, what was that? It was a movie in the 60s. I think it was Fahrenheit 411, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
451.
451, yeah. And that's
all right. Well, is that it?
That's it.
Have we reached the end?
I think so.
All right. Well, I'll say this now. Good night, everyone. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to send those emails with any articles or questions you may have. So, long way around there. And we'll look at them and get them and put them in next week's podcast and go through them. So good night, everyone. Have a great Sabbath, and we'll see you again next week.
Good night.
We're happy you could make it. So glad you are here, and hope that we've been able to make God's word more clear. Until next time, may God be with you in everything you try. But for now, till next week, we have to say goodbye.